Welcome to the Planting Wildflowers podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Leonardis. I'm an entrepreneur, wife, mom, and stepmom. I'm super interested in people and perspectives, and I love how a good conversation can leave you feeling empowered. Sometimes even pique your curiosity to learn and grow. Mostly though, I love how really listening to one another opens up limitless opportunities for that beautiful sense of connection and community that we all love. Thanks for tuning in. Let's be inspired. Hi everyone, it's Rebecca Leonardis, and this is the Planting Wildflowers podcast. I'm so glad to have you back with me because today we are having a beautiful conversation with my friend Alexandra Lucier. I had the privilege of meeting Alex about, I think like a year and a half ago. It's not that long, but it was one of those moments where I was in a position where I was going to be the teacher for the evening and she was a participant. And little did I know that the conversation she and I would have would lead me into this world that she is a part of, the nutrition world. She is an extraordinary human who is so generous with her wisdom. She's a Windsor-born writer, a globetrotter, equestrian, and a girl boss. She's a certified holistic nutritionist. She believes in sustainable, non-diet approach to health and weight management that's based in whole foods, mostly plant-based, and that one that is tailored to each individual client's unique needs. Her nutrition consulting business, Well Fed, is about learning to listen. And I love that because I believe a good conversation is more about the listening than anything else. So her business is about learning to listen and respect our bodies, about saying no to restriction and deprivation, and yes to health, strength, and our most vibrant, confident selves. Alexandra, it is such a joy to have you on the podcast today. I'm so looking forward to learning from you because I know this is where your heart is at. So welcome to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you here. Tell us in your own words a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Rebecca. I'm so excited too. I've been looking forward to this since you asked me to be on, actually. I'm really excited. So a little bit about myself. I guess I would describe myself as a relentless happiness seeker, I think is probably the most accurate way I can describe myself.
Yeah.
Looking back at my life through, all the different identities I've inhabited and careers that I've kind of tried on and places that I've lived, I've never been afraid to give my life a complete dramatic overhaul when I found things just weren't quite working for me. And that's actually how I ended up working in the health and wellness industry. I was working in a shopping mall administration office at the time. I was 26. I was a marketing coordinator. And absolutely, no offense to anyone who works in marketing. I think it can be a fantastic career path, and there's certainly a lot of opportunities to do a lot of good in the world that way. And I also think that if it were meant for me, I probably would have been a lot more engaged and probably better at it, But on my own time, at the time, I was already kind of very self-taught in wellness and nutrition. I'd had a lot of weight and body image struggles already, some disordered eating patterns. So I had a lot of experience already with health and nutrition. I was very passionate about it and was already doing a lot of content creation and blogging and recipe creating. So when my contract came up in that job, at the end of it, I decided I was going to go back to school for nutrition. And thankfully, our friend Shelly Rusky, who was actually a friend of mine already at the time, she worked downstairs in the mall at the nutrition store. And she pretty much offered me a job on the spot when I told her what my plans were to help, float me through my schooling. at the supplement store. So that's how that happened. And yeah, I've been a certified holistic nutritionist for the past few years and very, very happy doing it. I feel like I've, found my calling, so to speak, and I'm very fulfilled doing it. It makes me happy. It makes me feel like I'm making a difference every day and making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, there's no question. That's where it's at these days. We all seem to need guidance in that particular direction. Now, I'm really intrigued with how you came to the world of nutrition. And I am a big believer in all of the experiences that we've had in our life are always preparing us or lining us up for the next thing that we'll be doing in life. And you mentioned, even in your own life, some of the experiences that you were having kind of put you on this path or provided you with some experiences so that you're relatable and people can connect with you on a deeper level. There's no doubt that you have the research and the schooling, but having had some of these experiences takes it to a whole other level. And I want to get into this, but you mentioned something before we go there. You mentioned that your experiences, your willingness to sort of transform yourself and try new things. And you also mentioned that you've done a lot of travel.
Mm-hmm.
You are a globetrotter. Can we just, before we get into nutrition, can we touch on that just for a moment? Because I think these experiences all lend themselves to where we're at in this time and space. And there's no question, if you've experienced other cultures, that this has something to do with where you're at today. So tell us a bit about that experience in life.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I don't mind talking about it at all. It's one of my, the favorite times in my life that I've had for sure. And I do believe that all of our experiences shape us and serve a purpose in terms of where we end up. And travel, I think, was a major and is a major part of my life in terms of how therapeutic it is. I find that there's kind of another version of ourselves that steps forward when we're in a foreign country, even alone in a foreign country, especially. And I love that part of myself a lot. And I think it helps me ground and come back to myself, and has done so during times in my life when I really needed that. So yeah, I've done some volunteer work in places like Ghana, Africa, and Ecuador. And I've also just done some adventure travel in places like Guatemala, Belize, Costa Rica. When I got my undergrad, I took off on a solo round the world trip that I'd been planning and saving for since like the 9th grade. And yeah, so that's probably like one of my favorite things that I ever did. I was gone for around 5 or 6 months, and then I settled in South Korea for another 6 months to teach English because, as you do, I ran out of money and had to figure out what was next. But yeah, I loved it. I loved every second.
Do you have a favorite place that you've spent time in?
So many people ask me that, and it's like I think it's like choosing your favorite kid.
Oh.
It's I love so many places for so different reasons. Croatia was a very pleasant surprise. I don't think I expected as much as I got out of it, and the people were absolutely incredible. Like probably some of the warmest, friendliest, most generous people that I've ever spent time with. And the food and the wine too was like unbelievably good, like, better than maybe even Italy and France, I thought.
Yeah.
And just absolutely beautiful, untouched countryside, mountains, wine country, crystal clear lakes, so much history. There's just so much there. I loved it.
Wow. That's and you like to write. I imagine that you've probably done a lot of writing in some of those spaces, or maybe more of a reflective writing now that you're settled here in Ontario. I'm sure that those moments, those places and those times are worth putting those words on paper.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was gone on that like big post-grad trip. I actually did keep a travel blog. It was more of just a journal, but I did publish it online, and I'm thankful that I did, because when I got home, I had it printed into a hard copy book, and now I can look back on it and read through it and look at the photos and just remember all the things that are easy to forget as the years go by, or you distance yourself from it. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that I put that in writing.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. Okay, I could probably talk about your world travel for the entire time that we're together, but I want to get into food, specifically nutrition, and find out how we can give some valuable information to the listeners, because I know that nutrition is still something so perplexing for a lot of people, and I'm not going to exclude myself from that. I in one moment I hear something and I think I've got a handle on the best approach to health and wellness from a nutrition perspective. And then in the very next moment, I learned something that I would describe as completely contrary. So it flips my lid and puts me in this space where I don't feel like I know exactly what's going on from a food perspective. So I'm curious, in your practice right now, in your nutrition business, what are some of the most common things that you're hearing from your clients? I'm sure stress and boosting immunity are a big part of it, but maybe even above and beyond that, there's something that you can share with us as a commonality, something that we all share and approach you with.
Yeah, for sure. So I just want to touch on, like, you're definitely not alone in terms of the confusion around and conflict around, like, what's actually good for you and what's not, and what diet is best and what fad diet is next and why it's better than the last one. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that comes from just the food industry, like as a business. You know what I mean? So many studies, unfortunately, are industry funded when it comes to holistic health and food and nutrition. There's a lot of big money involved, whether it's the dairy industry, or junk food brands, or whoever funded what particular study is going to find some benefit of some food, and probably a pitfall as well. So that's where some of the confusion comes from, and that's where you really want to turn your attention to, like, some reputable professionals who have gone to school for nutrition and who've spent a lot of years reviewing peer-reviewed studies and double-blind clinical trials, and have a really unbiased perspective on it. And then, yeah, in terms of what people come to me for the most right now, like, obviously immune health is a huge one. Any cold and flu season, but especially this one, as you can imagine. Stress is
Probably the biggest thing is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if I've mentioned yet, but I also manage Pure Nature Nutrition Center, the LaSalle location. So I'm the manager at that store, as well as a certified nutritionist who sees clients. So I see both clients and customers on a daily basis, which is helpful. And a lot of people are coming in the store right now for, like, stress and anxiety supplements, which I can totally understand. And then gut health is another big one right now, which at first was a little bit perplexing, but once I thought about it and did some research, it did make sense, how much our gut and digestion is really affected by stress, for sure. And then, a lot of people probably aren't eating or drinking as well as they should, given the circumstances, and not that I can blame them. So that affects it as well. And then, all of the antibacterial stuff that we're using right now, as important as it is, for sure, I'm not saying we shouldn't use it, but it does have some impact on our gut flora, those friendly bacteria in our digestive systems that serve as our defense systems, our immune systems, digestive health, mental health. They do so many things. So I have seen a little bit of an uprise in that stuff as well.
I'm really glad that you touch on that. That's something that we talk about even in our own home. Not so much with the kids having been on, like, this extended, air quotes, Christmas break. But I was getting really worried, because each and every time they come in and out of the classroom and the recesses, and so many times throughout the day, kids are being required to use this antibacterial gels or sprays or all of these different things. And all I keep thinking is how that impacts their gut flora, because you're right, it's something that needs to happen, especially right now in our current circumstance. But there is always a consequence to the actions that we take. So being mindful about those is super important. So I'm guessing that you're going to share with us some of the ways that we can boost our gut health so that we're creating an offset to, can I call it damage? Can I call it damage from using antibacterial properties? I don't want to create any kind of fear, but the reality is that it's a negative side effect of using something that's necessary in this environment.
Absolutely. And, yeah, you can definitely call it damage. That's one word for it. Like they say, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I absolutely do not want to put the message out there that we should not use antibacterials. We shouldn't wash our hands or sanitize, because those are really important practices and they are keeping so many of us safe right now and our relatives. And we should absolutely continue doing them. But there are definitely things we can do or incorporate into our daily routines and diets that will help protect us long term in terms of keeping our gut flora intact, keeping our immune systems intact, and our natural defense systems, so we aren't left more vulnerable, to infection down the road. So things like fermented foods are really important. Things like kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, miso, pretty much anything fermented is going to contain some probiotics and help feed those good gut bacteria. You can take a probiotic supplement. Usually we recommend around a 20 to 50 billion count, depending on the individual. We have a really good line in the store called Genestra. That's the brand. They do tons of research and testing and studies on their products. They're super well formulated. They're human strains, so they're the most natural bacteria for our body to adopt. So yeah, those are some good practices we can adopt. And then, stress management for sure, because stress.
Tell us that. Everyone's like, their radar just went off. Tell me how to manage all the stress.
Well, yeah, that's very individualized, but things like meditation never hurts if that's your style. That is a big help for so many people, myself included. Finding an exercise practice that really resonates with you and that you enjoy, whether it's just something simple like walking or yoga. If you have access to a pool, you can do swimming, and that's especially good if you have joint pain. Anything that you enjoy will help lower stress levels, detox the body, and just bring you back to center on a daily basis. Baths are nice, reading, it's everyone has a different, stress management technique. Alcohol is not highly recommended, but yeah.
Got it. Got it. I love those ideas. And what I love about the suggestions you've made about managing stress is that each of the ideas that you've given to us are things that are they're accessible, they're affordable, and they're easy to do. So if we just tap into any or all of the recommendations that you've just shared, we have this increase in our ability to decrease the amount of stress and its effects on the body. And I for one really appreciate that, because some of these things I know, but we tend to forget when we're in these strange times. Some of the easiest things we don't tap into because we're not dialed into them anymore. We're kind of lost in our circumstances, and really everything that we need is already within us. We just have to tap into it. So I love that you share meditation, fermented foods that, I mean, quality fermented foods can be purchased, or if you're someone who is really savvy in the kitchen and loves to create, fermenting foods is something that I know not so much in my generation, or maybe it's just in my household, but I know previous generations in my family, that's a big thing. Fermenting foods was a really big thing. So I'm glad that you shared those options with us. They're certainly great. And can I clarify, did you say that when it comes to probiotics, the average person would be needing 20 to 50 billion, what's the measurement? 20 to 50 billion, is it IUs? Or
Well, like 20 to 50 billion bacteria.
Bacteria.
Like,
Okay.
per dose,
Sure how to say
basically.
that.
Yeah, usually we recommend starting with the lower end of the dose if you've never taken any before, and then working your way up. Just because if you start too high, it's not necessarily dangerous, but it can overwhelm the digestive tract, and then you might just experience, some side effects to start, like gas and bloating. What's actually happening is the good bacteria in the probiotic are killing off any bad bacteria that are in your system. And those bad bacteria die and ferment and produce gas, and then that's when you get the side effects. Again, it's not harmful at all. It should last a maximum of maybe 3 days, and then you're fine. It's just, some people get a little bit scared off by that. So we prefer they start at the lower dose and then work their way up. Okay. And then if they have taken probiotics before and they have any major digestive issues, or if they recently finished a round of antibiotics, that's when we would recommend starting with a higher dose.
Okay, that's really good advice. I think a lot of times many of us will walk into places, we won't ask for help. We'll often approach some of the shelves, and we know that we're there to pick up a probiotic, but we're not necessarily sure the quantities, how often you take it. And I don't know why we don't ask for help more often, but hopefully this advice that you're sharing with us today will enlighten a lot of people and give them the confidence that they need to just go in and pick up something that's going to be enormously beneficial. Can I ask you, in your opinion, should every person be taking probiotics?
Again, it is highly individual. I would say that most people should probably be taking a probiotic. Yeah. Okay. Unless you live, in a really remote, pristine area of the world and you eat lots of whole plant foods from the earth and don't, take any medications or drink or eat a lot of sugar. That's really the only case when you probably wouldn't need one. But most of us in today's day and age, yeah, we should be taking one because it's like a multivitamin. We deplete our good bacteria every day. So we have to keep taking it to keep repleting them. We kill them off with, things like medications and caffeine and alcohol and sugar and, any other toxins we take in. And we use them for things like mood balance and immune health and obviously digestive health. So yeah, we have to keep replenishing them on a daily basis. And then another thing I forgot to mention too is you can now find probiotics in skin products, which is really great for, anyone who's putting on moisturizer or hand cream after the sanitizing and the washing. That could be a really important thing you can try and do.
Oh, yeah.
And they also have them in like gum and lozenges as well. So you can actually get your oral bacteria back up to par as well, not just, deep in the gut, which is our front line of defense, right? Our mouth and our nose is pretty much your first line of defense. So that's always a good idea as well.
Good to know. I did not know that. Okay. I will be keeping my eye open for something like that. I want to talk for a minute. This is a subject that's really important to me, the subject of mental wellness. And I wondered if we could talk for a moment about the relationship between food and mental wellness, or food and cognition, for example. I know they're closely linked. I would love to get your perspective on how nutrition relates to mental wellness or emotional well-being.
Absolutely, yes. More and more research is coming out confirming the relationship between diet and mental wellness for sure. We now know that up to about 80 to 90% of our serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone and neurotransmitter, is actually produced in the gut by those good gut bacteria. So it's not produced, in the brain or glands at all. It's produced by your gut bacteria. And there's a nerve called the vagus nerve, which runs from the gut, the brainstem to your digestive tract, that acts as a two-way highway and carries signals literally from your gut to your brain in terms of functioning and mood and emotions and all kinds of things. So we know that what we put in our digestive tract is super important and contributes to that. And we also know that there's roughly, this is kind of gross, but also really cool, that there's roughly about a 3-pound mass of bacteria, good bacteria, in our colons. So about the same size and weight as our brains, that carries out actually more functions in our body than our brains.
Whoa.
Like, how mind-blowing is that, huh?
Yeah, that is something to wrap your head around. If you're hearing this for the first time,
Mhm.
it's staggering.
Yeah.
The only thing I can really relate it to is you've probably heard somebody mention before, having a gut feeling or your gut instinct, and that's that relationship that you're describing, albeit in better detail. But we've all somewhere along the line known that there was a connection. This is fascinating to think of. So you're saying that this roughly 3 pound cluster of bacteria, how pretty is that image,
Right.
is responsible for what? Like, what sort of functions would that bacteria be executing in the body? What can we rely on that bacteria for? And why should we be, I guess, nurturing the bacteria?
So many things. Like I said, producing hormones and neurotransmitters is a big function, like serotonin, that hormone that makes us feel happy and safe and comfortable and prevents things like depression and anxiety and even addictive tendencies and helps with sleep. Immune system is another big function of that bacteria, again, as our defense system. Preventing autoimmune conditions, preventing things like leaky gut, which is where we get little fissures in our intestinal lining, which allows food particles and toxins to actually leak into the bloodstream and cause an immune reaction. That's where a lot of autoimmune conditions come from. So it helps prevent that as well. And then helps control something called the parasympathetic nervous system response. And a less fancy word for that is the rest and digest response. So that is the nerve activation system that takes us out of that fight or flight, hyper aware, high stress state of mind and actually brings us down to a physical state where we can heal, where tissues repair, where we detoxify, where all of the vital functions of healing actually happen. So it helps with that as well.
This is incredible. And so far, I mean, everything that you have commented on, it's all tied together. It's like if we're looking for a great place to start, nutritionally speaking, you can start anywhere and it's going to have some sort of impact or ripple effect on other systems in the body. It sounds as though you cannot, I mean, when you put your nutrition and your well-being at the forefront or make it a priority, you can't lose. It's a win-win situation. And specific to what we were talking about before, mental wellness and emotional well-being, we all need to tap into nutrition for this very reason. The impact on the way, not just the way we move through life, but the way we experience life is counting on us to be making nutrition a priority for that very reason. It's critical. And I don't know, as a kid, I would have never thought something like that. This has all been a very new finding in my adult life to know that the way I feel, the way my emotions are impacted is a direct result in a lot of cases by what it is that I am consuming or what I am not consuming in terms of nutrition. And if this is a new concept for you as a listener, I think today is a good day. Today is a good day for you to be exposed to this for the very first time, because now you can never not know that there is this beautiful relationship of mental well-being, emotional care that's linked directly to food and nutrition. I love it.
Absolutely. And once you experience the difference as well, you can't unknow it. You know what I mean? I think for so many people, myself included, it can take a really long time to actually make that connection between what we put in our body, what we fuel ourselves with, and how we feel. So many people don't make that connection for a really long time, and they don't think that, what they're consuming is having any influence at all on, or could even be the cause of, say, some anxiety or depression or even chronic pain, chronic fatigue, until they actually make those changes for a prolonged period of time. And that's what I help people do. Until that happens, they don't actually know what it feels like to feel good. It's crazy. And once you feel it and feel the vibrancy and what it is like to be pain-free or have energy again, and you can't unknow it at that point, and it becomes a healthy eating and healthy lifestyle becomes something you really enjoy doing at that point. It's not a chore.
Yeah, that is such a good thing to hear you say. That offers all of us hope. And not only is there hope being offered, but this tremendous sense of self-empowerment, because we're genuinely in control of our 70 or 75 trillion cells. Like, we have the power to transform what is happening on all levels of our being. And this is a good day for people who are hearing this for the first time, and a good day for those of us who might have known this, but somewhere along the line, we've forgotten, whether we chose to forget or life has just gotten so chaotic that these things have fallen off our radar. It's important to dial back. You mentioned the term coming back to center, and perhaps this episode is exactly that. It serves as that centering point for us again and gets us back in that space where we can move in the direction of health instead of away from it. Alexandra, what is the one thing that you would describe as a non-negotiable when it comes to, be it mental wellness or nutritional health? Is there something that no client of yours could ever walk away not being exposed to?
Well, when I'm working with clients, pretty much whatever the issue is, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or just even weight related, whatever it is, it always comes back to what I call the 4 cornerstones of good health. And when I say health, I mean mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health. And the 4 cornerstones are sleep, exercise, nutrition, and hydration. Okay. So no matter what the issue is, if I can get the person doing just those 4, they sound, believe me, they sound super basic and super simple and easy, but it's not quite as easy as you might think just to manage those 4 things on a daily basis. But once I get them doing that, and I've experienced this myself as well in the past, things just start working better, and some issues that we've been really overwhelmed by before or couldn't quite figure out how to fix or even approach, didn't know how to start, just kind of magically resolve themselves. Because the essentials of those 4 things are just impossible to overstate.
Yeah, that's a huge consideration. Like you said, the 4 cornerstones that you mentioned, they do sound easy. They sound basic, but when you begin to peel back the layers, there's a lot more involved, and they're all critical elements to living a fulfilled life. I love that. Now, I'm big on this. I'm like, is there a vitamin I'm missing, especially right now in this situation that we're in? I'm like, am I making sure that I'm taking all the things that I'm meant to take? And I know that, I'm a vitamin C kind of person. I'm a vitamin D, but is there anything that, we should all be, making sure without a doubt that we're consuming in our day-to-day lives to maintain or to move in the direction of health and wellness for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a food first, health practitioner, and I believe in the power of dietary changes just in and of themselves. But I definitely believe in the power of supplements too. And I think in today's world, it would be maybe a little bit naive to think that diet is enough just by itself. And unfortunately, in today's world, just because our soils are so overtilled and depleted of nutrients now, they used to contain much, much higher levels of vitamins and minerals, and that would translate into the food we ate. Meat is raised and produced a lot differently than it used to be. We're not eating as many wild caught fish and game and wild grown produce as well, local produce. So that's really why we need to incorporate some supplements into the routine as well, that's what supplement means, right? To supplement the diet in terms of whatever we could be missing. So in terms of what we need, at least in this part of the world, this time of year, vitamin D is probably at the top of the list.
Okay.
It is super important for immune function. It's pretty much the foundation of our immune system, even more so than vitamin C, which a lot of people don't know. It's very important for mental health and mood balance. And then, of course, bone health is another function of it as well.
So, okay, vitamin D is something that we know that we can get when we go outside. It can be absorbed through the skin with some sun exposure. Am I right on that?
Yes.
In terms of supplementing, what is the value? What are the amounts that we would need to take to ensure that we're getting enough of it? Because I know if you're listening to this podcast and we're, just so you know, we are in Canada and we are in the middle of winter. It's late January when Alex and I are having this conversation. So vitamin D is like at the very tippy top of our priority list right now. But what's the correct amount?
Yeah, so in Canada, you will only find supplements up to 1,000 IU per dose, like either per drop or per capsule, depending on the form that you're taking. That's because Health Canada hasn't approved higher doses just over the counter. You can get higher doses from a doctor via prescription. Now, the only really accurate way to know how much you as an individual need is through a blood test, which you can get from any GP. But usually in this part of the world, in the winter, a good recommendation is about 3,000 to 5,000 IU per day. So a good way to get that is by purchasing a high quality vitamin D liquid or drops. Most of those are going to be 1,000 IU per drop. So all you have to do is take like 3 to 5 drops straight on the tongue, easy peasy, over and done with. It is a fat soluble vitamin, which means, well, it means two things: that we always need to take it with a fat source. But if you buy a high quality vitamin D supplement, it will already be in an oil base because the distributors know that and they formulate it that way. It also means that we can store it in our bodies. So it is potentially possible to overdose on it. But like I said, in Canada in the winter, you'd have to work really hard at that.
Okay. All right. That's good. I didn't realize it was quite so high. And you said that you can request this from your GP, get a blood test that would determine your vitamin D levels?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't get like a full vitamin and mineral blood panel done. At least most GPs won't necessarily do that, but vitamin D is a pretty standard one that they will test for.
Excellent to know. This is good. Okay, I'm going to ask for that the next time I'm in. Oh boy, I have appreciated this so much. I'm not necessarily transitioning, but I'm kind of curious about something that you hear an awful lot about right now. With all of us being sort of more homebound than ever, we're all spending more time on social, and we're seeing a lot of the suggestions, shall I call them, about nutrition lifestyles. And by that, I mean, to lose weight, try this, you should be on keto, you should go paleo, you should become a vegan, you should do a vegetarian diet. Like my head literally wants to rocket off my shoulders. I don't know which way to go. And I know so many people, even in my own sort of circle of friends, who all have such differing opinions on the value of each of these types of lifestyles. There can't be a silver bullet. There's not a silver bullet for anything. Can you comment on what some of these lifestyles are, maybe the pros and cons of them, or just your general perception of what these mean to us in our current society? Who do they benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes back to kind of the conflicting information thing as well, right? Everyone has a magic pill, so to speak.
Yeah.
And there are definitely benefits to every single one of those ways of eating, and they might benefit different individuals at different times in their lives. And, who's to say that they're right or wrong for anyone? There's no perfect diet for everyone out there on the planet. So different things are going to work for different people for different reasons at different times. So it's really about experimenting and seeing what works for you. The thing that I've found just through experience and through constant research and education and trial and error is that whether it's vegan, keto, paleo, vegetarian, like any of these eating styles, if you're transitioning from a standard American diet, which is, mostly trans fats, high inflammatory omega-6s, lots of sugar, stuff like that. If you're transitioning from that highly processed diet to any of those ways of eating, you're going to see some benefit. So what I've found most often is it's not really about what the diet is giving you, it's what it's taking away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because with any of those, even carnivore, like as much as I don't really endorse a purely carnivore diet, especially long term, it eliminates a lot of food allergens, a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar. Then when you take those things away, you're automatically going to see inflammation decrease. You're going to see autoimmune conditions subside, energy increase, weight drop off. And you're going to see the same things happen with a vegan diet.
Yeah. That's something I never even thought about before. It's not so much what it gives you, it's what it's, removing. And I suppose that said, it's creating a more mindful behavior about what it is that you're consuming. You're actually thinking about what it is instead of doing the convenient quick grab. Any lifestyle you adopt, you have to think about what you're going to have for your next meal. So I suppose that would be the benefit to adopting any of those leading lifestyle diets right now. If that's, I don't even know if that's a word that we like to use anymore, but
yeah, no, it's not. And I definitely am not a huge fan of any extreme or fad diet long term. I think they can serve as a valuable starting off point for a lot of people, but at some point there's definitely value in finding some flexibility and freedom and experimenting to see what works for you rather than following something dogmatically just for the sake of following it. You know what I mean? Because that in itself has some pitfalls as well. No matter what you choose to do, I always endorse as whole foods a diet as possible. So as few ingredients as possible, as close to nature as possible, very few processed foods, if any. And then there's never, a bad side to incorporating plenty of plant foods into your diet, whether you're vegan or not. There's just so many benefits in terms of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and fruits and vegetables, and just so many benefits for your body and things that we need.
yeah, it makes sense when you think about it in that way. And can I ask you, people have, I've been in part, in conversations before with people, and people who eat very healthy diets, but don't necessarily or won't necessarily purchase organic foods. Is that a concern? What's your opinion on that?
It can be. So there's a resource you can look up and find really easily. It's on a lot of health and nutrition sites, and I think, Canada's Food Guide site as well. But there's a resource called the Dirty Dozen. And if you look that up, it'll tell you what 12 foods are actually pretty essential to buy organic because they're so heavily sprayed or because we eat the skin, especially. So things like apples, grapes, tomatoes are on there, I know, strawberries. Because we eat the whole fruit, we're ingesting whatever's on the outside of that food, right? So those foods, it definitely is more beneficial to try and buy organic if at all possible. If you can't, I'd still rather you eat that food than not because you couldn't buy organic, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? The benefits still kind of outweigh the risks. I'd rather you eat that than default to a more processed, less nutrient dense option just because you can't buy organic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I suppose these days there are so many suggestions out there. If you can't buy organic for whatever reason, it's not available to you, or the cost, because the cost of organic foods does tend to be more. If that's just not within your budget, there's so many easy ways these days to clean your non-organic foods so that they are more ready for consumption, I guess.
Yes, definitely. We sell some pretty good fruit and veggie washes in the store actually that are completely all natural. You can also make your own really cheaply with just some essential oils and some carrier oils. and you just, spray it on the food, let it sit, and then rinse. And that will pretty much get off whatever is on there, whether it's waxes or pesticides, herbicides. There's still the matter of looking out for, genetically engineered foods, but that's a whole different issue entirely. And it eliminates one of the major risks for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I know the very first time I did that, when I did fruit and veggie wash, I put red grapes into the wash, and I was blown away at how you can visually see the I don't even know what it is, debris, I'll just call it debris, coming off of that fruit. And how now I don't know that I could eat fruit or vegetables without having washed it in that particular in that fruit and veggie wash. It's so simple, first of all, and it makes such an incredible difference. It's amazing. So that's just another way that we can elevate the nutritional experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, can you, as a nutritionist, can you give us, like, what would you say are your top 5 nutrition tips? And I know you probably have 5 million, but boil it down for us to about five takeaways.
Yeah, no, I definitely have a top 5, and I could run you through the typical, like, shop on the outside of the grocery store and buy food with only one ingredient. But I feel like, I don't want to patronize too much. I think a lot of us know those basics by this point. And like you, like, mental emotional health is a really big part of my business as well. And in terms of getting people to change their lifestyle and the way that they eat, there's a huge mental emotional component to it, and it's really a mindset shift. So that's kind of where these top 5 tips come from. And so the first one is eat what you love. Never ever force feed yourself something just because it's healthy. You know what I mean? I personally can't stand kale, never have been able to stomach it. But the good news is, there's tons of other foods that you can get the same benefits from that you don't have to choke down. Like apricots, for example, or romaine lettuce is super nutrient dense, and I love the crispness and the flavor of it. So I eat that instead. Mm-hmm. Because really the most effective healthy eating pattern, like, again, I don't like the word diet either, but the most effective way of eating is going to be the one that you're able to stick to long term. And if you don't like it, you're not going to stick to it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 would be find healthy alternatives. So we're lucky to live in a world today where there's pretty much a healthy alternative to any food that you like to eat. You can find recipes on, like, Pinterest is a great resource for that, for things like chocolate avocado chia pudding that just tastes like chocolate pudding. Or nice cream is another favorite of mine. It's where, like, you blend up some frozen bananas and vanilla extract and whatever else you want, peanut butter or chocolate chips or what have you, and it pretty much tastes like vanilla soft serve. Like, you'd have a hard time telling the difference. Yeah,
what? Just those simple ingredients.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
And then, there's healthy paleo brownie recipes. I actually have a really good vegan Caesar salad dressing that I use pretty much weekly because I'm just obsessed with it. And these are things that you can eat on a daily basis, and it won't pull you off track in terms of, like, your health and fitness goals at all. In fact, it'll only contribute to them, and they taste really, really good. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 would be listen to your body. So pay attention to how you feel after meals. And this is where food journaling can really, really come in handy, even though I don't necessarily believe it can be the healthiest practice in the really long term, but it can be super helpful in the short term for just getting to know what I call your body language. Like, everyone's body has a language that it speaks in terms of how it tells you when something's wrong. And, it could be that gluten makes you bloated or gives you indigestion, and dairy makes your skin break out. Maybe, I had some sugar yesterday and today I feel a little bit depressed or my mood's off. So the only way we can get a really good handle on these patterns is by keeping a really consistent food journal and then referring to it on a daily basis. And then we know, what's working for us and what's not. Tip number 4 would be don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So I think so many of us fall into this trap where it's the black or white, all or nothing mindset. You know, we're either on the wagon or we're off it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're off it, we fall hard. You know what I mean? Like we've all been there. But I like to use analogy of like, if you lost $10, you wouldn't go ahead and empty your bank account, right? Like that wouldn't make sense. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing with health and nutrition. Like don't let, you know, that one work lunch out or that one piece of birthday cake or whatever, like ruin all of your progress so far. Because realistically, it's going to have very little, if any, effect on your goals at the time. And the other thing too is life happens, and it's just not realistic to think that we're going to stick to our eating plan 100% to a T perfectly day in and day out. It's just not going to happen, and I don't think it's healthy to really try either. So yeah, sometimes like we have to settle for it as good as it gets, and that's what's going to take us the farthest, more so than trying to make it perfect.
Yeah, I like that one in particular.
And then the last tip is meet yourself where you are. So this is a big platform of my consulting business. Like we all have to start somewhere, you know what I mean? And you can't start from a place that you haven't gotten to yet. And I think it's so important. I know this is going to sound super cliche, but it really is so important to love and accept yourself just as you are right now, because if you can't, you know, how are you going to think that you're worthy or deserving of the changes that you want? So by meeting yourself where you are, you're really setting yourself up for success in the long term, because self-love comes before change, not the other way around, right? We have to
Oh,
believe we're worthy
wow.
and deserving of those changes before they can come our way.
Self-love comes before change.
Yeah.
So those who experience the greatest results or the greatest changes or transformations are people who are recognizing themselves as already good enough.
Right.
I
Exactly.
love it. Alexandra, that's beautiful. That's a helpful thing because I think you're putting all of us in. You know, if we don't have this opportunity to recognize within ourselves that we are already amazing, then, like you said, why would we invest in you know, something that is going to challenge us or something that's going to pull us in directions that we're not comfortable with just yet? We won't recognize the value in that journey unless we're starting from a place of self-love. I think I've never heard a nutritionist say that before, and it's no wonder that your practice is so unique and lovely, because that's where it has to start. That's
I'm so
beautiful.
glad. Like, yeah.
Those 5 tips are amazing. So we'll have those in the show notes. And you know, it would be great if listeners would print those out for themselves and have those as sort of the guidance for themselves throughout 2021. What will guide me through this year? What will bring me to a place of success? And I know we all view success as something very different. But those are very good guiding principles for all of us. These nutrition tips are so much more than purely about food consumption or supplementing. They go into all of the layers of our health and well-being. This is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
health rarely is just about food, right? Like there's so much more to it.
but we always it seems like we put all of the emphasis on the food. And I think that's where all the pressure can come from. You know,
Mm-hmm.
having been someone who has experienced this firsthand, I have finally reached a point in my life where I recognize what it is that you're saying. And I know that the physical, yeah, like the physical layer is not necessarily that layer that you're tackling first. You need to view the mental side of things. You need to view the spiritual side of things, because we can't consider ourselves healthy individuals without knowing that we are affecting each one of those important aspects of our being, one impacts the other. They don't improve or deplete without some sort of action being taken. It's really lovely to hear that this is the approach that you take in your practice. I love knowing this. It's a healthy way to look at things. So there's a couple more things I want to know from you before we wrap this up. I would love to know who your mentors are, who you look to for your advice, because every person who is a giver like you give information, you give support, you are giving of yourself all of the time. You also, on the other end of it, need to be receiving. And being in an industry where there's these conflicting pieces of information all the time, you need to have some trustworthy sources. And your mentors are probably people that you place a lot of hope and a lot of trust into. I would love to know who those people are. And then I want you to share with the listeners where we can find you, because you have most definitely inspired us to want to follow you in the future.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to. In terms of mentors, if we're talking about health and nutrition and like the wellness industry, Kelly Levesque is a really good nutritionist that I follow. She's a creator of what's called the Fab Four smoothie, and is really good at helping women get a hold of their hormones and blood sugar control. And she's gotten into more fertility stuff lately. And I just love all the information she provides. She's got, podcasts and interviews you can find on YouTube. And I think she's written books as well. So she's one that I really admire a lot. And then Julie Daniluk was actually really instrumental in me getting into this industry. She was one of the nutritionists that I started to follow back when I was working in marketing in the mall office. She actually gave a talk at the mall where I worked, and I was in charge of marketing that event, and that's how I found her. But she wrote like the hot detox and the anti.
I thought I recognized. Yeah. I'm looking over at my bookshelf, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's who she's talking about.
Yep. So I did the hot detox. That was like one of the first nutrition or wellness programs that I tried on myself, and the results were so extreme and mind-blowing and good that I couldn't ignore the power of health and nutrition and actually taking care of your body after that. And that's kind of what instigated me professionally getting into the industry. So, and I actually had the privilege of meeting her as well one year at CHFA, which is a big health food expo in Toronto at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. And she's such a nice person as well, and so vibrant and so full of energy. So she's one of my mentors for sure. And then outside of the health and wellness industry, I'm a big Brene Brown fan.
Me
one
too.
Of those people. Yeah, big believer in the power of vulnerability and destigmatizing, shame and mental wellness. And so I've read a few of her books, and I follow absolutely everything that she does as well. Elizabeth Gilbert was very instrumental. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She was that author. She was the one who inspired me to travel around the world when I was younger. So yeah, those would probably be my top mentors.
Oh, those are good ones, really good ones to have. Each of them I'm familiar with, so I'm so glad that you brought them back into my the front of my thinking, because now I'm going to dig, especially Kelly Levesque. I have one of her books. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I know it's in my little cookbook cupboard. I'm going to dig that out, because you mentioned her smoothie recipes and whatnot. I'll give one of those a try tomorrow. And the hot detox, yeah, it's fantastic. And of course, Brene Brown and Elizabeth Gilbert, big fans. And coincidentally, those two, I believe those two are friends. Like, they're connected in some way. Yeah, it makes sense to me that they're connected to each other. This has been so powerful. You just have this kindness vibe you have this energy that I would never feel. I wish we lived closer, because I would never feel concerned about going in and asking you questions on nutrition. I would never feel as though, I was asking a quote unquote silly question, because you don't know what you don't know. And the fact of the matter is, we need people like you. We need people like you that have the information, have the wisdom, and have that generous heart to share what you know with other people and break it down in a way that makes sense to those of us who are just beginning our nutrition journey. And for those of us who would consider ourselves, beyond the beginning points, this is a never ending path of discovering what benefits the body and what can detract from our overall vibrance. And you are just that provider of information. And I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I know that the listeners are going to come at me with, how do we get a hold of her? How do I follow her? I need to be in touch with her. So why don't you share with us how we can go about doing that, so that we can stay connected forever?
Oh, thanks so much, Rebecca. That makes me so happy to hear. Yeah, for sure. So I'm on Facebook at Well-Fed Health and Nutrition Coaching. That's my business page. Instagram at alexandra.lucier. So Alexandra with just an R-A .Lucier. That's my Instagram handle. My website is wellfednutrition.ca. And there, all one word, there you can find nutrition blogs and articles that I've written on different topics, as well as some recipes and then services and pricing in terms of what I offer to clients and other businesses. And then, you can pretty much find me most of the time at Pure Nature in LaSalle, where I work. We're still open, even through the stay-at-home order and the lockdown. We're an essential service, so we're open for shopping, and I'm there most days.
This is so good. What if we don't live anywhere near you and we still want to partner with you in some way? Do you have any kind of virtual opportunities for people to tap into?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, actually now all of my consulting is done either virtually or over the phone, as per, COVID restrictions and safety protocols. So I do conduct consults via phone, Skype, Zoom, anything like that. And I can do it no matter where you live. And then, I normally obviously would be more than happy to see clients in person, but I absolutely can do it many other ways as well.
Okay. That's one of the nice things coming out of this stay-at-home order, is that we have really learned to find connection in other ways. I'm glad people can find you and spend time with you virtually. That means everyone in our audience, regardless of where they're listening from, can tap into your brilliance and the energy that you offer to people when it comes to their desire to take better care of themselves. We're all on this journey together, and it's people like yourself who make the learning and the process of feeling really good in our bodies such a joy. So again, I'm going to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am a big believer that when you invest your time in places, it needs to be received with the utmost gratitude, because time is our only non-renewable resource. The fact that you chose to spend your time with us here on the Planting Wildflowers podcast is such an honor. And I hope we can connect again. Maybe we can have you back and, dive into another element of health and nutrition, because I know that you have got all the wisdom, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, of course, I loved every second of it. I'd love to come back and do it again for sure.
All right. I'm going to hold you to it, my friend.
All right.
For those of you who have listened, hung out with us right to the very end, I want to thank you as well for your time today. It's always such a joy knowing that we can spend this time together from wherever you're at in the world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of Planting Wildflowers. Until then, I know you love this episode, so please make sure that you rate, subscribe to this podcast, and share this with your friends so more and more people can tap into this kind of goodness. Thank you, everyone. Until we can meet again, stay happy and healthy. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, friends. Thank you for hanging out with us here at the Planting Wildflowers podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you again real soon. And in the meantime, if you would be so kind as to rate, subscribe, and share this podcast with others, I'd be most grateful. We'll catch you again soon. Until then, take good care.